So I get that I'm a day or two late on making this video, but I'm kind of at the point with the Phoenix Suns where I don't see a path towards contention for this team. Realistically, I'm not sure what they could do with the roster they have right now to turn into a contender for a championship this season. And look, I know I just made a video on this team, but my opinion on them has shifted even since that video. I have officially joined the dark side of, if there was a blow it up button for the Phoenix Suns and I was their general manager, I would press that button. Let's just put it that way. Mat Ishbia, your moves and your big swings that you wanted to take after buying the Suns has failed. I'm sorry. Ishbia, by the way, seems like a good owner. He just lowered concession prices for Phoenix fans at their stadium or at their arena. And I think that because of him being a young, passionate basketball guy, I do think there will be a future in Phoenix basketball. I just don't think that future is with the core they've assembled right now, centered around Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, and Devin Booker. This team is clearly not proving to be anything more than a borderline playoff contender in the Western Conference. We're going to talk more about that in this video, but also talk about why I think they should blow it up and what that would look like. Before we hop into the video, if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Help me push towards the 2,000 subscriber mark on the channel, uploading every single day, multiple NBA videos a day. Would really appreciate it if y'all do subscribe. Without further ado, let's hop right into it. So the Suns, in their last 10 games, 3-7, they've lost 3 in a row. They are 15-17, a game back of the 10 seed. Somehow the Suns are completely out of the play-in. And I mean, you can blame injuries all you want to a certain extent, but this is kind of embarrassing, y'all. Like, we got to be better than this. This is a team, again, let's just remember, this is a team that has traded basically every single tradable asset that they have and has no money whatsoever and is in the second apron. Like, this is a team with no financial flexibility and no assets. And they are the 11 seed. That's horrible. Just starting there. You look at the numbers. Look, Brad Beal's having an okay year. Devin Booker's efficiency's down this year, but we know he's a talented guy. Kevin Durant, he might be old. He might be nearly 37, but he's still 28 a game almost on ridiculous efficiency. 6.5 rebounds a game. Still an absolutely elite playmate, or just player in general. Tyus Jones, a very talented point guard who I think would be interesting for a lot of playoff teams. Nurkic sucks. Royce O'Neal's a really good 3-and-D role player. There are teams that would want him. There are probably teams that would want Grayson Allen. Ryan Dunn has some promise as a young rookie. He hasn't shot the ball well since the first couple weeks of the season, but I do think there's a lot of athletic ability and defensive ability and talent with him if he can really become a consistent shooter. Outside of that, not sure there's a ton of other guys on this team that have a lot of asset value, but like as a whole, there are intriguing assets on this team. There's no doubt about that. My biggest concern with the Suns is that the team that they have right now is very clearly not a serious contender, and yet there seems to be no sense of urgency in Phoenix from what I can tell to try to improve it. This tweet that I saw just made me laugh. It's not that important, but they're not actively shopping Jusuf Nurkic. The way that read to me is nobody is interested at all in Jusuf Nurkic. There's nothing to shop him for. They would have to attach stuff to Nurkic to get rid of him, I think. And he is not an interesting value piece, I think, to any team around the league. But the problem with this team is, look, let's talk about KD. They started the season, the whole thing. I made a video about the Suns early in the year about how good they looked. And then KD gets hurt and it's like, oh, okay, so they're not very good without KD, but with him, they're really good. And that's what the numbers said early in the season. They start the season winning, 9 of their first 10 without KD. He misses a bunch of games, comes back, they win 3 out of 4. Cool. Misses some more games, they lose all 3. All right, whatever. They come back, win their first 2 games with KD back again for the second time, but against Utah and Portland. Those aren't super impressive wins. And since then have lost 6 of their last 7 with him, including losses to Indiana and Detroit, a blowout loss to Denver, a loss to Dallas without Luka, who has since beating Phoenix, lost 3 straight, including to a couple of not great teams, and then also losses to Golden State, who are struggling in their own right, and Memphis without Ja Morant. These are not exactly great losses. That's a really bad sign that they have lost 6 of their last 7 with KD. KD doesn't even seem to be enough to really get this team going in the right direction. And look, at this point, let's look at the standings yet again. They're not super far out of it, right? They're 4 games out of the 4th seed. So it's not an unrecoverable deficit, but the problem is this team just does not look well equipped enough on either end of the court. They're not an elite enough offensive team or defensive team, in all honesty, to be a top tier contender on either end of the court. You just look at them and you go, what do they do really, really well? And I'm not really sure. You look at the on-off numbers, Bradley Beal, who's getting paid $50 million a year, has been arguably their worst player, at least in terms of these on-off numbers, has really not been a great asset for them. I mean, KD and Booker stagger minutes a lot, which I think makes sense as to why their plus minuses aren't great for these on-off numbers. But in general, it's like their third best player is a massively overpaid contract who doesn't really play a lot of defense and isn't a primary or even really secondary offensive option. And then KD and Booker are great, but Booker's having a down season efficiency-wise, and KD is a 36-year-old who's already had injuries twice already this season and is clearly not a guy who you can count on for 70 games a year and have the need that you need of him. I mean, at this point, like, they don't have a real center. Nurkic has sucked. Mason Plumlee's okay, but he's just a role player at best. Osei Iguodala I actually kind of like, but are they really going to play him 25, 30 minutes a game? I find that unlikely. So it's like, in the playoffs, what's the lineup if they make the playoffs? Is KD at the 5? This team doesn't have the assets to make moves, and they don't have the roster to compete. You look at their future picks. They literally have a 2031 first, which isn't for another 6 freaking seasons. And then they have Denver's 26 second, their own 31 second, and Denver's 31 second. That is it. Every single other draft pick that they have is either going to another team or they will get the worst of a group of picks due to pick swaps. They literally have basically no assets with which to do anything. The only thing they could do is trade a 2031 pick swap. And like, you look at this team, I get that the stats aren't horrifically awful, but they're not winning, especially recently. And they have no assets for the future whatsoever with a roster that, again, is aging. I mean, we can look at the numbers right here. Like, KD is 36. He's not getting any better or any healthier as a player at this point in his career. Brad Beal isn't going to get better as a player at this point in his career. Devin Booker's a great player, but he's 28. He's not a spring chicken anymore. Like, this guy, again, very talented. Never really thought I'd say he's not going to be in Phoenix for his entire career, but I look at this roster, and in order to build for the future, I think you have to trade Kevin Durant. And honestly, I think you have to trade Devin Booker too, because by the time that this team is in a position to be a contender again and to be competitive again, Booker's going to be 32, 33 years old. All he's going to do is slow down a rebuild, and he's not going to be a guy who can lift you to contention by himself. The thing is, Bradley Beal has no value whatsoever because of his contract. I get that. You're not getting real value for him. But Devin Booker, as a 20 to 28-year-old, probably top 15 or 20 player in the league, guy who at times looks like a serious bona fide superstar offensively and can be a pretty high effort, engaged defensive player. Not to mention he's a legitimate playmaker for himself and for his teammates as well. That's a guy that teams would give up a lot of assets for. That's a guy you can get 4 first-round picks and pieces for. Like a Kevin Durant type package is very reasonable for a Devin Booker. I mean, he's one of those guys who is just going to have massive trade value if they were to remove him. And Kevin Durant, I get he's 36, but what type of team is not going to want a guy who's still probably a plus defender and shoots 51, 41, nearly 90 every single season? He's flirting with 50, 40, 90 if he's not 50, 40, 90. And I mean, he still rebounds the ball. He's still a pretty good defender. And he's one of the greatest scorers, even right now, that the league has ever seen. Why would anybody not want those two players? The market for those guys would still be absolutely massive. And that would give them the ability to recoup a ton of the assets that they've lost and actually have a chance to rebuild. Because let's say you trade KD for 4 firsts, Devin Booker for 5, and you get a couple of young pieces as well. You could really easily, I think it's totally feasible that you could get between 8 to 10 first-round picks and between 1 or 3 young assets with guys with actual future potential to be at least good role players for Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. Like, that is a haul that would give you the ability to actually start rebuilding towards something in the future. Unfortunately for them, they don't have their own pick this year, which makes it tough to tank, because you tank just to lose a pick anyway. You know what I'm saying? So they're not getting their pick anyway this year. Next year, they'll have a pick swap. The year after that, they don't have their pick. The year after that, they'll have a pick swap. Like, it's complicated, obviously, but I don't know. I don't really see a great future for the Suns team as it is right now. In fact, I see almost no positive future for the Suns team. So if it was me, I would actually blow it up. That is my legitimate opinion. Y'all might disagree with me, but I hope I laid out a decent case as to why. That is my thought process in this video. If you agree or disagree with me, feel free to leave a comment. Let me know either way what your perspective is about this Suns team. If you did enjoy the video, make sure you hit that like button, leave a comment, and subscribe. I'll be back with more NBA content very, very soon, and I appreciate y'all. Peace.